Welcome to another edition of the Sourdough Simpleton. I'm Mark Levy and I'm trying to guide you through this world of sourdough one step at a time. One question that comes up very early in looking at recipes is what's the difference between a discard and a fed sourdough starter, and does it really matter? Well, it does matter, and let's take a look why. First of all, here's a sourdough starter that's been in the refrigerator for a couple of days. Take a look at it, and inside we see a little thin layer of hooch floating up on top, that little liquid, and it doesn't have a lot of bubbles. It's kind of laying there flat and isn't doing too much. We need to get this active if we want to bake a bread with it. Now, there are recipes that use a discard, and we'll get to that in a second, but we're not going to look at those recipes right now. It's a wonderful avenue to look at, and I'm sure we're going to explore it going forward. But for right now, we're going to talk about how to get this sourdough starter from the refrigerator ready to bake a loaf of bread today. By the way, making sourdough is not something you can usually do on the spur of the moment. While you can do a discard recipe and kind of do that quickly, most sourdough requires an active starter, which we're going to do this morning, and that takes time to prepare and time to sit out to get active. So if you're going to make a sourdough bread, you kind of have to think about it in the morning and then bake it a little later in the day, or think about it at night and bake it the next morning. So be prepared for the time involved. It isn't prep time as much as it is sitting around and waiting for the stuff to do its thing. Now, back to the starter. So we have the starter that's been in the refrigerator for a couple of days, and the first thing we want to do is wake it up. The first thing we need to know is how much starter is in here. We're going to do that by weight, of course. So we'll take this sourdough starter with the top on, everything else, and put it on our trusty scale. And we weigh this, and we find out that it weighs 1,035 grams. Got that? Remember that number. Now, we're going to weigh an empty jar. So the empty jar weighs 480 grams. A little simple math will tell us that the amount of starter in there is 555 grams. We want to remove everything except roughly the original amount, which was 236 grams. So it's pretty simple. We put our scale down. We put on a measuring cup to catch the discard. Mix it up a little bit. And we're going to pour off about 319 grams, give or take. That's 320 grams. Take my word for it. So this is our discard. Now, once again, there are recipes that could use this today, right now, to make something. And I promise you we're going to do that in the future. But for today, we're going to discard the discard. But now we have to feed our starter, because it's been sitting around for a while, growing, generating waste products, and not being very active. If we want to use this for a recipe, we have to make it active. And how do you make it active? You feed it. How do you feed a starter? Same way we started a starter. We're going to give it 118 grams of all-purpose unbleached flour, and 118 grams of water. I'll throw a new word at you, hydration. When you use equal parts of water and flour, that's said to be 100% hydration. Most of the recipes that we're going to use a starter which is at 100% hydration. There are some recipes that use more or less, which would obviously be a more watery or less watery starter, but that's advanced, and we're simpletons, and we're not going to go there, okay? All right, so we've mixed up some fresh food, fresh flour, and fresh water into the remnant of the starter left behind after we discarded a bunch of it, about half of it, a little more than half of it actually. And now we're going to leave this on the counter, out at room temperature. And again, room temperature today is about 75 degrees. We're going to cover it loosely. We do want some air circulation in there, but I don't want anything flying in there and settling. So loosely is fine. And this will sit on the counter for a couple of hours. So when that happens, it will be a fully fed starter, and we'll be able to use it to bake something. Be sure and come back to see what happens in the next episode when we bake a bread. In the meantime, remember to subscribe to this channel by pushing the subscribe channel on the YouTube page. Visit the Facebook page as well, and the website. So the Facebook page is Sourdough Simpleton, and the website is www.sourdoughsimpleton.com. Be sure to like the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll go from there. So have fun. We're going to be starting baking real soon right here on the Sourdough Simpleton.